Good morning, folks. Let's kick off the show with the political disclaimer first again this week. Kind of like getting it done first because it doesn't interrupt my train of thought during the introduction. Anyway, the following content is approved by Larry Linton for TN12, candidate for the GOP nomination for Tennessee House of Representatives, District 12, Larry Linton, Treasurer. Now for a bit of an update on the campaign. Door-to-door knocking has been going extremely well. I've not encountered a negative person yet. A couple of skeptical people, sure, but not negative. In fact, there were a couple of occasions that when I got to the door, the person answering it started the conversation with this: "You've already got my vote." Boy, that sure does put an extra pep in my step, if you know what I mean. Plus, my volunteers are having good interactions on the phones and during their door to door visits. All in all, things seem to be going really well. In fact, maybe too well in the minds of the good old boy network. More on that in another segment. It will tie into a couple of things that I have encountered this past week. This past Saturday, Representative Monty Fritz from District 32 was in town. He came to read the proclamation that he helped author that was signed by the governor declaring July a month of prayer and intermittent fasting here in Tennessee. Mr. Fritz is one of the most genuine men in politics that I have met. We spoke on the phone for a good length of time a couple of months ago, and we've kept in contact via text since that initial conversation. A friend of mine had advised me to reach out to Mr. Fritz early in my campaign this time to seek advice and guidance. He inspired me with his story, and I like to think that I did the same thing for him. Now, this coming week will be another busy one for me. The surgery for my left hand is scheduled for Tuesday with physical therapy the following Friday. In between, you know what I'll be doing, right? Hitting the phones and the pavement. Oh, we have to throw in some personal appointments too, because that's what I have to get done when I'm not on hitch. On the professional side, I just received word that I'll be transitioning to working with different teams for my client. The next out of state engagement will be in Wyoming and South Dakota. First, though, I'll have to make a quick round through Mississippi and Louisiana for some finishing touches on the work I started there back in April. Now, that won't occur until after the primary is over, though, but it's exciting nonetheless. I'll be traveling to a part of the nation that I've not been to yet. I cannot wait to explore those areas in the evenings while I'm out there. Oh, and then another sad note on top of a good note. This past Sunday, I attended worship services in person for the first time in 3 weeks. And you know what I saw? I saw a sign, one of my big, most expensive campaign signs, stolen from right in front of the place where my family and I worship. That's low down and dirty, don't you think? Anyway, let's get on with this week's episode of Liberty, Leadership, and Lies, where I will discuss the subtle ways in which the establishment, or the good old boy network, how they attack the liberty of the citizens they are supposed to serve. We all know the reason for the attacks, right? To keep themselves in positions of power and control. The liberty of the people be damned. So let's take a stand in the arena together again this week, folks, and get on with the show. Welcome to the Liberty, Leadership, and Lies podcast. On this show, we will discuss the assaults on our liberty by the very institution we the people created to secure our liberty. We will also compare and contrast the actions of people in leadership positions to the servant leadership that is needed to protect our God-given, constitutionally protected rights. Additionally, we will break down the many lies that elected and unelected officials in government and media spin every day in order to secure for themselves positions of power and influence that are antithetical to the system of government our founding fathers created and passed down to us. Your host on this program is Larry Linton, a 30-year veteran of the United States Navy who also runs his own leadership consulting company. He is also a candidate for the Republican Party's nomination to represent Tennessee's House District 12, which includes Gatlinburg, Pigeon Forge, Pittman Center, Weirs Valley, Seymour, and parts of Sevierville, and most of Sevier County. So here is your host, Larry Linton. Once again, good morning, folks. As I mentioned in the introduction, things seem to be going extremely well for the campaign. Positive interactions with the vast majority of the voters. Advertising on social media is going well, too. Of course, there are the occasional backcrap crazies that like to troll my social media pages and comment on my posts. Most of the time, it's coming from the cult of the death camp. right? They accuse me and all Republicans of taking away women's rights. That's just another one of those lies that the communists and government have convinced the weakest of minds in our country to believe. The lie that aborting babies falls under the category of reproductive health care. Because of that lie, we are living through some of the dumbest stuff of all time, politically speaking. Do you all recall the brouhaha over the abortion ruling in Arizona earlier this year, where the pre statehood law that still allows for abortion if the life of the mother is at risk, which was a much more realistic thing when written than it is today, thanks to modern medicine, instead of one faction betraying the core GOP values of life at conception and the pro life voter base, and the pro life elected candidates and officials allowing themselves to get pancaked as radicals in the media, what needs to occur is relaxing ideology for a moment and stating simply the pre statehood law allowed for abortion if the life of the mother is at risk. Isn't that what you commie wackadoodles want? Since all this screaming is about how the GOP wants women to die? The same thing applies to the Human Life Protection Act here in Tennessee. Yet here we are, right? Then what can happen? If we restrain ourselves like sacrificing a chess piece, it is to create a floor debate where the issue of rape and incest is brought up. That is always the fallback position when these communists are challenged on the facts. Well, here are some more facts. Rape, incest, and threat to the mother's life made up 1.5% of reasons for all abortions, or 1 out of 67. That means that prior to the Dobbs decision, 66 of 67 abortions are done as a means of birth control, or more bluntly, as a means of convenience, which means they either cannot afford the child or don't want to sacrifice the time necessary to take care of the child. A child, mind you, that is a result of their quote unquote fun time that they devoted. If you encounter these people, please invite these evil people, these worshipers at the altar of baby sacrifice, invite them to debate that fact in the open, and you will see how quickly they get into aborting babies on the delivery room floor. But enough about that lie or that subtle attack on liberty. Well, it really isn't that subtle, right? It's a direct attack on the liberty and right to life of the unborn. But it also brings to mind a bit of good news for the campaign. I recently received an endorsement from a group called Stand for Health Freedom. That organization supports candidates who will make and support policy that protect and expand individual and family choice in matters of personal health. They believe, and rightfully so, that I will defend and expand these rights for Tennessee residents. Their Tennessee voter guide was updated and posted last week, and they are emailing the states with the voter guide as well as they will be notifying all the voters here in House District 12 about their endorsement of me via their email. I shared their endorsement graphic all across my socials, and the crazies came out of the woodwork again, folks, with statements like, oh, you support gender affirming care or reproductive freedom, and all the nonsense language that the mentally ill use to equate abortion with. The very notion that they equate reproduction and murder, that's mind blowing. Reproduction creates life, abortion ends life. That is the mindset we are up against, folks. That and the establishment Republicans that allowed us to get to this point in the first place. So that brings my campaign, though, with another freedom and liberty supporting endorsement. I also received word that the Tennessee voter guide, put together by Mr. Craig Huey, has given me their highest candidate rating. Some of the listeners may be familiar with the work of Mr. Huey, but for those of you who aren't, I'll give you a bit of background. In addition to putting together the Tennessee voter guide, he also puts out something titled the Huey Report. The report is a powerful tool to transform our politics and culture for the better. From the perspective of an internationally successful business owner, Craig Huey has created thousands of jobs and knows how to make change. Having navigated and weathered 6 recessions, his award-winning advertising agency, the Creative Direct Marketing Group, they have turned small businesses into multi-million-dollar companies and have won 97 awards. Mr. Huey is the author of several books as well. Among them are The Christian Voter, The Deep State, the new multi-channel integrated marketing, and 23 equity crowdfunding secrets to raise capital. He appears often on Fox, Newsmax, C-SPAN, radio, and podcasts nationwide. Now, with the Huey Report, you get news and analysis and trends you won't find anywhere else. You get to be the real hope and real change. You get to help restore the American dream. You get to help reclaim jobs, freedom, and prosperity. You get their voter guide, which even covers the judges nationwide. With it, you will be educated, empowered, and engaged to vote for your values. Mr. Huey's voter guide has a 5-level rating assigned to candidates on the Tennessee voter guide. First, though, let me tell you or share with you some information behind their process. The Tennessee voter guide seeks to inform you so that you vote for and not against your values in the upcoming elections. They do not want you to be deceived. Political ads are everywhere, and mailers or mailboxes are being flooded with flyers. I must be candid here, folks. My ads and mailers are out there as well. Same thing with my yard signs, except for the ones that have been stolen, like I mentioned earlier. But the Tennessee voter guide asks this: just who are these candidates? If you vote for them, are you voting against your values? Big tech, social media, biased media, and political ads are all distorting the reality of who these candidates are. That is why Mr. Huey and the people over at the Tennessee Voter Guide has done in-depth research on all the candidates and have posted them on TennesseeVoterGuide.com. Or actually, it's TennesseeVoterGuide.com. They're there for your reference. And as I mentioned earlier, Mr. Huey's assistant informed me that would be updated very soon. The nonpartisan 2024 Tennessee Voter Guide will help you cut through the rhetoric, election propaganda, and biased media coverage of the campaigns, in addition to what the Good Old Boy Network and their close circle of friends would have you believe. This guide ranks every aspect of a candidate's record according to experience, integrity, commitment to community, and much more. The Tennessee Voter Guide wants to make sure that voters have candidates on the local level that will work on these 4 priorities. 1, stop the forced masking of kids, ignoring parental rights over forced vaccinations, and support for homeschooling and school choice. 2, want to lower taxes, not raise taxes. 3, work to help businesses grow and prosper to create better jobs and wages, not hinder them with job-killing regulations. And number 4, fight to make sure that school system curriculums are acceptable and good for the kids, not destructive with critical race theory, pornography, anti-American history, anti-free enterprise, pro-socialist concepts, which is sadly happening right now in Tennessee schools. Mr. Huey and his team have vetted the candidates and rated them at that website. They've rated the judges, school board members, county commissioners, and more. The ratings are listed by county, so it's easy for you to see. This group has been doing this research on candidates for over 25 years. They want to let the voters know that each candidate has been thoroughly researched, including where they stand on the issues that matter to you before you go into the voting booth. The people in this organization see who donated to candidates and who the candidates donated to. Also, who they've endorsed and who's endorsed them. Through their research, they can cut through the lies and distortions of who these people really are. Every candidate is considered after thorough research. Additionally, Mr. Huey's group has a questionnaire for candidates to complete, plus their Tennessee Taxpayer Protection Pledge. Now, the rating system they use is as follows. A rating of 5-star means that is the best candidate and their strongest endorsement. 4 stars means it's a very good candidate. 3 stars, it's an acceptable candidate. 2 stars, hey, just vote only to them to prevent a worse candidate from winning. And finally, number 1, a 1 star means do not vote for. Mr. Huey's assistant notified me very recently that I've been awarded a 5-star rating from the Tennessee Voter Guide. And like I said, their website will be updated very soon, along with a statewide notification of their rating. That's going to be pretty good, right? Another organization that has given me their endorsement is one called Drain the Swamp Political Action Committee. This is the same organization that endorsed President Trump, along with some of the stalwarts in the conservative movement, like U.S. Senators Tommy Tuberville and Rand Paul, and U.S. Representatives Jim Jordan, Tom Massey, Andy Biggs, Paul Gosar, Matt Gaetz, and former Navy SEAL and Congressman Eli Crane. I'm humbled to have my name included with these conservative patriots. So, as I mentioned in the introduction to this week's show, as well as at the beginning of this segment, things seem to be going well for the campaign. It isn't just the endorsements, though. It's other things, like the people I'm meeting when I'm going door to door in the county. One of the best encounters so far happened last Friday when I was out in a part of Seymour. I started walking up a driveway right when it started to drizzle a little bit outside. And I see this young lady come to the door through her glass storm door with two small children clinging to her, as well as a couple of puppies barking at her feet. She sees me walking up, and before I could even say a word of introduction, she tells me that I already have her vote. Things like that really keeps me going, folks. I have not had one single bad or unfavorable interaction so far with my door knocking. But that was definitely the best so far. Then there's the occasional email or social media message letting me know that they got my flyer when they returned home from work or from errands, and they thanked me for stopping by. Well, I'm up against the first break of the show, folks, so I'll see you on the other side where I'll provide some more updates on the campaign and the subtle attacks from the establishment. So we'll be right back. And we're back. I went a bit long on that first segment, so I'll try and dial it back a bit on this one, folks. So let's recap the endorsements and support for my campaign so far, shall we? First, there's the National Organization of Restore Liberty, along with their Tennessee branch of Restore Liberty, Tennessee. I'm also supported by the Tennessee Firearms Association Legislative Action Committee, Drain the Swamp Political Action Committee. And don't get this wrong, folks. Washington, D.C. isn't the only swamp in our republic. The Good Old Boy Network here locally, as well as across the state, they are just as swampy too. Stand for Health Freedom has also endorsed me. Do you notice a theme there? All of those organizations are dedicated to preserving and protecting our God-given rights. There's also the Tennessee Voter Guide. They've given me a 5-star, their highest rating. On top of that, the most conservative member of the Tennessee Senate, the Iron Lady of Tennessee, Senator Janice Bowling, has also endorsed me in this campaign. Liberty, freedom, and conservative values. They have always been a part of me. Unlike my opponent in this campaign, who did a beautiful cell phone with a social media post the other day. In his post, when they made on the 5th of July, he claims that he is ready to be the conservative champion District 12 needs in Nashville. I'm glad he's ready now, but where has that been in the past? Is expanding the government, generating new regulations, and charging residents new fees to operate small businesses being a conservative champion? Of course it isn't. But as usual, when it comes to the establishment or Good Old Boy Network, words never match their actions. My opponent's 25 years on the county commission here in Sevier County, it's a mixed bag of actions, not consistently conservative, but consistently serving his and the Good Old Boys Network's self-interest. That is a method the establishment uses to subtly attack our liberty. Just like last week's episode where we discussed how lies travel faster than the truth, claiming to be a conservative based upon a mixed bag of half-truths and self-serving actions, it fools the voters. Another way in which they subtly attack is by trolling or sending their trolls out on social media. Just last week, I was informed that the county commission, the Good Old Boy Network, the one where my opponent has been sitting on for 25 years, the county commission was seeking to remove billboards that were put up along Boys Creek Highway. Well, that just happens to be one of the main thoroughfares out where I live. This action took place or was reported on July 2nd, and that's according to the local newspaper, the Mountain Press. The original article stated they are seeking an injunction against the company behind these billboards and, now get this, an injunction against the property owners leasing the lands to the billboard company. Timing's a bit suspect, and it may be a pure coincidence, but my billboard advertisement went live on the 30th of June. I'm not a huge believer in coincidences, folks. Just 2 days after my advertisement went up, the county commission, again, on which my political opponent has a seat, wants to have these billboards taken down. That kind of sounds like what big tech did to Donald Trump in 2020, right? Or what big tech and the commies did as it related to the jab in 2021 and beyond. Am I wrong? The powers that be cannot tolerate a message opposing their regime or their control. They cannot tolerate to be made available to the public. Now, anyway, I shared my thoughts on that in a social media public forum, and what do you think happened? Of course, the trolls come out and attack my reasoning. But get this, the first one that attacked was none other than the wife of a county commissioner, a person that donated the maximum allowable amount of money, both her and her good old boy network husband, the maximum each in this primary. Yep, the one that sits on the county commission that is trying to get the signs pulled down. After she chimed in, another Karen in the group tried to pile on. Let me tell you, they do not know how to handle it when somebody doesn't back down to their bullying and belittling tactics. It was glorious, folks. Once again, I don't engage with these trolls to attempt to get them to change their minds, because that won't happen. I engage so that the others, people that read or listen to the exchange, can be influenced by the facts presented instead of the trolls' feelings. These subtle attacks on liberty are not just happening against myself and the messaging I'm trying to share with the voters. They are also attacking any conservative that dares to stand up against the establishment. Another local candidate that is being attacked, both subtly and openly, just happens to be my state senator, Frank Nicely. Now, if you live in Senator Nicely's district, you have probably heard numerous or received numerous flyers in the mail, either from his opponent in the primary or from establishment backers, especially from the backers of Governor Lee's school voucher scam. I shouldn't be, but I'm amazed at the amount of money these organizations are spending in an attempt to get more government control over our freedoms. It's absolutely sickening. If you live here in Sevier County, 2/3 of which fall under Senator Nicely's Senate district, please do not be fooled by any of the propaganda you are receiving. A simple rule to understand or to follow is this, folks. If American Federation for Children and Team Kid Political Action Committee are endorsing a candidate, it is highly likely that that candidate is not, let me repeat, not a truly conservative candidate. That means the flip side of the coin is true as well. If these two groups are putting out literature opposing a candidate, well, there's your conservative candidate. Both of those groups I mentioned have ties to that wonderful group of freedom supporters, the United Nations. Additionally, they are affiliated with the Walton Foundation, Black Lives Matter, and Americans for Prosperity. Any group that wants to allow the government to use taxpayer money to bribe the voters to purchase freedom from an institution wholly controlled by the government, that is anti-liberty, that is anti-freedom, that is anti-conservatism. So do not believe the subtle attacks you are all receiving in the mail about Senator Frank Nicely. Educate yourselves on all of the candidates. Educate yourselves on who supports them and what their supporters believe. Speaking of education, I received an email from a voter here in the county who is also a teacher. I'll keep this person's name private to protect them from the woke mind virus mob. But anyway, I received this email and had 5 very specific questions on it. I know I shouldn't do this, but here is where I would like to give some advice to my opponent, or any opponent. When you get a specific question, give a specific answer, not the platitudes and generalities that you are used to governing by. So I prefaced my response to this person's questions with this statement. People may not like where I stand on issues, but at the very least, they will know exactly where I do stand. This person's questions had to do with school choice, the 10 commandments in classrooms, standardized testing, using supplemental materials in the classroom, and finally, what my plans are to include the constituents of this district and their voices on any bills that I would vote on or propose. Very valid questions that deserve very specific answers. Something my opponent will not do and has not done. Well, he's given answers, but not very truthfully, though. Remember? I provided this constituent with my responses to each question individually. Do you want to know what happened? Well, we discovered we have some very common ground around the issue of government education. Folks, that is how we move things forward to advance freedom and liberty in our state. We listen to the constituents. We answer their specific questions with specific answers so we can discover that common ground that we can move forward in. All in all, folks, it was a mixed bag of experiences this week. Definitely more positive than negative. Keep the emails with your questions coming in. This upcoming week will involve some more door-to-door knocking and setting up a location somewhere in the county where I'll make myself available to the community to stop by and see me for their own individual or personal Q&A session. I'll put up a canopy, a couple of chairs, some cold water, and anybody can stop by and we'll have a chat. I'll be sure and put the notification out on my social media pages. So if you live here in District 12, be on the lookout for that. It probably will not be tomorrow, though. That is when I go in for surgery on my left hand. I must tell you, folks, the results I have on my right hand from the surgery, it's phenomenal. There's no more burning, tingling, or numbness, and some of my fine dexterity skills are returning. That has me looking forward to tomorrow's surgery and subsequent recovery. Okay, folks, as I promised, I did not go too long in this segment. I'm going to take a break right here and come back with the closing of the show and God's Word. So we'll be right back. All right, folks, let's wrap up this week's show. First, though, I want to play you a little music clip. Something happened this past week. Well, it happened on two separate occasions on two separate topics, but it reminded me of this song. If you listen to the Freedom Matters podcast with Gary Humble and Kevin Kukaji, you know that Kevin tries to stump Gary with a soundbite at the beginning of every show. That kind of inspired me to do this a little bit. I know that I won't stump the audience with the name of the band or the name of the song once it starts playing, but like I said, these lyrics reminded me of two things that happened this past week. So give this a listen. Heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who heard it from another you've been messing around. Not the best sound quality, I know, but hey, it's just me, a laptop, and a microphone here. But yep, that was REO Speedwagon and their 1980 hit, Take It on the Run. Those opening lyrics describe perfectly what happened last week. The first bit of information that was conveyed to me was that my campaign has the Good Old Boy Network very nervous. They picked the guy who thought he was entitled to the seat based upon his grandfather having it in the distant past or some such nonsense, and the GOP backed him. The guy who won't, or maybe can't, debate in public where the voters would discover he doesn't have any conservative principles, just as I said, but only a sense of entitlement. A guy that has been campaigning from his basement like Joe Biden did. He has a seat on the county commission that is trying to eliminate one of the means of advertising that I have paid for, along with having trolls attack the messages I put out on social media. A guy who didn't even record his own radio advertisement, but had somebody else's voice do it. They should be worried, folks. And apparently, they have communicated that amongst themselves, and others have heard it. They've passed it along to me. Heard it from a friend who heard it from a friend who. But I did mention a second occasion where I got some information from somebody close to the opponent's team or the opponent's family. Something in his past that if the voters were aware of it, it would definitely change how they thought about the man. That was the reasoning behind one of my social media posts last week where I talked about the term moral turpitude. Look that term up, ladies and gentlemen. It applies in this case. Now, for the record, the individual that conveyed that information to me would not tell me the entire story for the fear of how it would hurt. Now, get this, hurt the children involved in the situation. I, for one, will not do anything that would hurt children. However, It is my sincere hope that this person, who is aware of the real character of the man that is running for the GOP nomination, makes the truth behind the man known to the voters before they cast their ballots starting this week. Before he gets into a position where he can not only hurt children, but the entire state of Tennessee. Now for this week's wisdom from God's Word. It comes to us from Romans chapter 1, verse 18. For the wrath of God is revealed from heaven against all ungodliness and unrighteousness of men, who by their unrighteousness suppress the truth. It is only ungodly and unrighteous men that suppress the truth. Truth with a capital T, and the truth in words and deeds. It is how the establishment subtly attacks our liberty. Last Saturday, as I mentioned earlier, Representative Monty Fritz came to the Sevier County Courthouse to read House Joint Resolution 803, which he primarily authored, and that Governor Lee signed, that declared that the month of July to be a time of prayer and intermittent fasting for the state of Tennessee. We should pray that God's hand of mercy is not lifted from our beloved state, and that we would see the wickedness that plagues us be removed through his divine intervention. My wife, my daughter, and I, along with at least 100 other residents here in the county, gathered Saturday morning at the courthouse to hear the proclamation. We also gathered to pray for our state. What is more telling, though, is who did not show up. Only 2 elected officials showed up. Representative Fritz himself, who doesn't represent this county, and Senator Nicely. Of course, the Sevier County Vice Mayor served as the county official host, but nobody else. And he's not an elected official. Sevier County Mayor Waters, he was out of town, but the sheriff wasn't there. County Commissioner Atchley wasn't there. Nobody else was there. Things that make you go, right? Well, that's it for this week, folks. Once again, I'm asking that you all take a stand in the arena with me. Together, we can make this happen. Until next week, Reveille, it's time to wake up.